Welcome to I'm no.Expert, episode number 5. And today I have a really, really cool special guest / friend who has honored me by being here. Philip Weeraratne, internationally acclaimed architect. Thank you for being here on I'm no.Expert.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. And so I really enjoy, we always have these casual conversations, and I thought it would be good for us to document one of these and just see where this goes, and maybe this could impact somebody's life, some young entrepreneur that's just getting into whatever they're getting into, because I think you've really showed me a lot that's gone on in your life in terms of your work and your business, and that's really impacted me positively. And I'm hoping that this is something that somebody else could draw from. So you're an architect. You've been doing this for a really long time, but the one key thing that I feel like everybody should understand is you can jump into something you love, that you're passionate about, but how do you turn that into a business and keep making it a business and being successful at it?
Yeah. Okay, cool. I've been doing it for a really long time, but it doesn't mean that I'm that old. Just to clarify. Yeah. But I'm slightly old. So it's like this. I think you can be passionate about something, whatever it may be, but it doesn't mean that it's going to excite you all the time, right? That's the difference.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about my architecture, and I'm passionate about being an architect, but it doesn't mean that there's a continuous high all the time and everything is sort of hunky-dory and it's all glory days and everything's smooth sailing and there's no the nuts and bolts of it. So I think that's where people sort of lose focus and they lose the plot.
Yeah.
Because especially a lot of people come young out of school, they just, whatever industry, they just see the glorious side of it. Right? They don't really see all the hard work, the toil, the late nights, the stress, the issues, the challenges with, like, for in my field of expertise, the challenges with construction companies, the challenges with suppliers, the challenges with clients, all of that. So they don't see all of that. So I think people are given a very rosy picture of whatever industry. It can be jewelry to running a coffee shop to even, doing what you are doing, Jason. You know? So I think that's where you have to come in knowing that it's going to take a lot of hours and a lot of work that has to go in, and I've got to be disciplined. At the end of the day, it's all about discipline as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. What made you decide, when I think about what I do as a filmmaker, I could very easily have gone and worked for a studio internationally, but I chose to start a business instead and then really work out that back end component, which a lot of people don't like to do, which is obviously what you did. What made you switch from being this architect, designer, artist, and still are, but what made you choose to be like, oh, maybe I want to start my own practice. Maybe I want to start my own business and actually grow this company to the scale it is today? What was that switch? What was that defining moment?
I want to be real about it. Right?
Absolutely.
So obviously it also comes down to the financial side of things, right? Because obviously if you are doing your own thing, the financial rewards are greater. And of course I did have pressing financial needs at the time I decided to go out on my own. But I would be telling a lie if I said it was only the finances.
Okay.
I did see the potential for being creatively expressive, that finally you wouldn't have any boundaries or limitations,
right?
And you could really be truly creatively expressive and experimentational in what you wanted to do.
Right.
And so I think I won't just say it was one of the two, it was both of those. And of course then the freedom, it's a perceived freedom. It really doesn't bring freedom, because I think for somebody who's working on an 8 to 5 job or 9 to 5 or whatever it may be, you switch off from work, you go home, and that's it. Right?
Yeah.
When you're the leader, when you're the one leading up from front, and you're running a practice and you're running even a creative industry, you live with your work, you eat your work, you breathe your work, you sleep with your work.
Yeah.
So I think it's a different sort of freedom.
Yeah.
But it's how you navigate it. I think in whether you're working for somebody or whether you're going to be doing your own thing, I think finally it's how you navigate all these challenges of each profession that come along. But yeah, so cutting a long story short, I think it was the financial rewards as well as, of course, the ability to be more creatively expressive.
Absolutely. I think it's a lot to do with a lot of people seeing the fruits that you have. I mean, with when you're in, like in our case in Colombo, I think this applies to everywhere around the world. People only see the fruits of your labor, right?
Yeah.
They only see the social media posts that you
Absolutely.
post like maybe once a week, and they're like, wow, he's traveling there. What it takes for you to actually get to that point of like choosing to fly anywhere you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, of course, the flip side of the coin, Jason, is that if I did work for a grand master or a great master, or maybe I chose to live in Paris or in New York, I'm sure I may have been a richer person in a different sense, right? But I think it's up to you. You can also live in Paris and New York and just come back 5 years later and be the same person who left Sri Lanka. That I know a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, they I mean, and with no offense to anybody, they probably go and then live there and just eat curry and just move around with the Sri Lankan boys and girls and come back.
Right.
Right. So I think, so what I did was that because I didn't have that opportunity and the exposure, I traveled in my mind. I traveled through books.
Wow.
I traveled through film, through documentary. And then whenever I could, get up enough money, I would travel out as much as I could. Yeah.
That's interesting. So wait, tell me more about that. So you come from humble beginnings. Yeah. Were your parents into architecture? Your dad was a pastor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a part-time pastor. He was working in a publication house.
Okay.
So he would write as well, but also he was a sort of a general government servant. But we were a very creative family. Like my grandmother, my grand-aunts, my aunts, uncles, a lot of them were either artists, musicians, or even fashion designers. So we were already in a sort of a creative stream. And they were also in a stream of just being professionals and intellectuals. So they were doctors. Their lifestyle was reading books, playing the piano, being interested in the arts, culture, history. So may have been very different to a business-oriented family.
Right.
So there was a bent towards the arts and towards literature and all of that. So obviously you grew up in that surrounding. And I had grandparents who sort of encouraged and inculcated creativity in us.
Right. So you growing up in that space, who taught you about, running your own practice and running your own business? Was this like you learned on the way, or
Absolutely.
did you?
100%. There's not a single person who I sat with and who taught me, okay, this is how you run a company. These are the things you got to do. These are the things you got to watch out for. But I had one simple practice that I would watch other people. So I had the good fortune of engaging with some of the leaders in different industries who are our clients.
Okay.
So I would watch the way they ran their business, the way they addressed their employees, the way they did different functions of running a business. As well as, of course, I must say I did work for a short period of time. When I say short, for about maybe 3 years in a large architectural practice.
Right.
And I studied my boss.
Okay.
And I studied all the processes and procedures that were already in place. But those are more towards the professional side of architecture.
Right.
Those are not really about running business. But I think that's a gifting I have, and that's a gifting that I have on me, the ability to be a creative person, but also see things from a business point of view.
Right. How did you, that's very interesting to say that you have a gift in, because that's something you've identified in yourself over time. Did you already know that? But if you did come to that point of understanding, oh, this is something I'm very good at, how did you come about finding that out?
I think in the process, it's simple things like you're sitting with your finance team and then you're talking about, and then you suddenly have a bright idea on how to sort of leverage on your current finances, or how to invest, or how to structure procurement, or how to structure expenses, or how to control expenses. So I think a lot of these things come through common sense and logic, knowledge, common sense, I think stuff like that.
Yeah. In our context today, we have ChatGPT to help us.
Yep, for sure. Yeah.
we do have the tools. You're talking about some of your mentors. You've also Jeffrey Bawa has been a massive influence on your career, I would think. Tell me about your interactions with him.
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey Bawa has a massive influence on Sri Lankan architecture.
Absolutely.
Period, in a way. because he was one of the first people to revolutionize. I mean, in a way, he got all the glory. There were others like Minette de Silva, and Minette de Silva was Asia's first female architect, if I'm not mistaken, not the world's. I think it was. She was Asia's first female architect, but highly celebrated all over the world. And she started interpreting. So we had this sort of slightly colonial hangover.
Yes.
And then everything became slightly sort of Art Deco, postmodern Art Deco sort of style architecture. And then people like, there's a lady by the name of Ina De Silva, who's a famous artist as well. She did batik. So they started evolving a style of architecture where they used inspiration from the traditional vernacular of Sri Lanka, and started rebuilding some of these courtyard-style houses and recycling old doors, windows, columns from old buildings. And then Jeffrey Baba was commissioned to do the first house ever for Ina De Silva. And that's where really he got inspired from doing very Americanized buildings into starting to do very vernacular local style buildings. And I had the good fortune of him being my tutor, my design tutor, when I was in my second year of architecture. And I remember I was very young. I was probably about 17, and rather passionately outspoken about my beliefs on creativity and architecture and design. And I remember sort of having this sort of slight verbal tussle with him in one of my presentations of our work, of my work. And he was on the jury. And he suggested, I mean, he's a very gracious, amazing man, you know. He was not obnoxious. He was not full of himself. He was not, that's a sign of a very secure man. You know?
Yes.
He didn't have to be obnoxious. He didn't have to be egoistical, but he would also subtly make suggestions. And he said, why don't you sort of change your roof style from a sort of a very flat concrete roof, which was my way. I was sort of very excited and passionate about modern architecture. And he said, no, why didn't you do a traditional tile roof for this and make it a more rectangular building instead of a round, very modernist building? And so I sort of got into this verbal duel with him on this. And I remember after he left, and I refused to change. And after he left, sort of my senior professors in the department or in the faculty of architecture that I was a part of, this Architects Institute, advised me that this is Jeffrey Baba and you should respect what he says, which is true maybe in a way, but also I wanted to be authentic. You know, it's very easy to latch on to somebody else's style and start mimicking that and just start producing and just becoming a carbon copy. And I very distinctly remember the second time was when he actually offered me an internship in his company. And because I mean, by God's grace, I mean, I had a talent for architecture and I was producing interesting designs after that. Since then, we started speaking to each other more often, and I would go across, and he had the time for students. He loved meeting students. So I would show him my work, that what I was doing as a student, and he loved my work. And he actually offered me an internship. And again, maybe I was a bit cheeky, but I actually, and by that time I had seen so many people becoming almost clones of him, And I told him, with all due respect, Mr. Baba, I would really like to continue to do what I'm doing outside, and I'd like to come to you for my tutoring, but I would want to sort of evolve and develop my own style. And I think I'm still evolving and developing my own style. We haven't arrived yet. I think it would be terrible or such a misfortune to have to say that I've arrived. Where I think I'm still evolving to a particular style. So that's my encounter. He was an amazing man. Wonderful man. I wish we had more of that sort of stature and caliber of people. Not, where you don't have to be so loud about who you are or pretentious or anything like that.
Can I ask you a question about that? Like when you came to that point of that intersection of that choice, now that's a big choice, right? Like you were saying, like if you took that internship today, you would have a pretty similar style to Baba, maybe not, but you chose to take your own path, and now you have like the style that you have today. When you came to that point, do you feel that you had already experienced enough to a place where you were sure with yourself, like this is me, and I think this is the right choice for me? Because I think a lot of people have these type of opportunities that come their way, and it's like this crossroads in their life. And I feel like that would have been a crossroad at one point in your life. But for people that are listening in that are in the genesis of their career, is that a wise choice to make when somebody does offer, if they do offer an internship, to take that, or is it important for you to find your own style?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's one sort of rule for it. But in my case, Jason, it was very clear. I didn't sort of have to dither about it for too long. It was very clear. I just wanted to be authentically me, and at that time, even more than now, you were just so driven and so obsessed about being your authentic self. Now you sort of, I think at this age, if somebody gives you a choice, you look at all the different pros and cons. You're looking at it long term, you're looking at what are the benefits, so much. At that time, maybe there was some kind of sort of innocence about oneself. That you just saw things for what they were and said, no, it's very clear. I want to just be my authentic self. And maybe there could have been a balance. Maybe I could have worked for a couple of years and then come out. But I think I got a head start because of this. And I still had the ability to reference to his work. I still had the ability to meet him. I still had the ability to see his work. So I think it is actually to oneself as to how you evolve. It's like the same story as, okay, you can be in Paris and come back and not have the slightest inspiration or influence from Paris.
Right.
But I can live in Colombo and know so much about, French or whatever other design, whether it's Scandinavian or European design. And really not have had traveled there or worked. So I think it's up to you to know. And now even more, you have so many tools available.
Absolutely. If you were to describe because you're saying it's evolving as you're going, no one's really arrived, and it would be sad to say that somebody has arrived. But if you were to describe your design philosophy and style today, how would you describe it?
Personally, Jason, I'm sort of, I would call myself a monastic minimalist.
Ooh.
Right? Yeah, that's a
good.
new terminology that I have coined for myself. It's never ever spoken about before.
Nice.
And I've termed this about being a monastic minimalist.
Okay.
But unfortunately, being the monastic minimalist style would probably have only like a sort of maybe 1% or less of people who would probably admire that from afar, or appreciate it, but to be able to really become immersed in that and to become an active participant of a monastically minimalist building, I think it would take a lot of renunciation in life in a way. How do you lead a sort of a very minimalist life? I know I have friends who lead very minimalist lives, right? But having said that, I admire everything. I admire almost all types of architecture and design and style, as long as it's not garish or, out of proportion. It has no sort of sense or semblance of a concept, of a philosophy behind it. And I think I have the ability to appreciate, and I love heritage buildings. I love art decor. I love sort of postmodern, maybe the least postmodern, but I also like sort of very timeless sort of buildings, modern timeless, tropical Asian styles. So I appreciate a lot of these. But really, if I was to build for myself, I'd probably build something that is absolutely monastically minimalist.
Interesting. That's a really cool.
And in a sense, also very futuristic.
Yeah. Finding your next nutrient-dense meal is really tough when you're on the road or you're working really long hours during filmmaking season or whatever it is that you're doing. KION has been with me since day one with its essential amino acids or its whey protein. I'm feeling great 100% while I'm on the road. So if you want to check him out, hit him up on KION.com. The link is in the description below, or use the coupon code Jason plus KION for your goodness on your next basket. Would it be a goodness basket? It's a goodness basket. KION.com. So when it comes to, that's a good one. Going into like that component of actually building a house, like you as an architect, this is also very similar with filmmaking or as directing or being a creative director. We collaborate with our clients at the same time, and usually it's you building for somebody else. How do you draw on that fine line with the design that you have, the design that you've intended to implement, and then what the client wants at the same time. Obviously, you're adding in your flavor into it, but how much is too much, and how many times do you need to like retract? Is there like a fine balance that you, or dance that you have?
I think that's sort of the key to our success as a practice and as a company, because I have a couple of senior partners as well, and we've all sort of been able to evolve to that place, sort of come to a place where, and you very beautifully said it, I think that kind of sort of fine dance. And it's about, I think, especially in something like architecture, it's the same thing. Like if you were to design, if you were a designer, a clothes designer, I mean, you have to do something, design something that fits somebody's body shape and height,
yes,
complexion, style, even character and charisma, right? So I'm very mindful that we don't try to make our clients sort of, a round peg in a square hole or a square peg in a round hole sort of thing.
Yeah.
That they fit in beautifully, because the most horrible thing is that for you to go back and see that they really live in something badly in a building,
right,
or that they are not comfortable, or they're unhappy, or they are struggling to cope and come around, Having said that, we try, my greatest ambition and greatest desire or pursuit is to really elevate people's lifestyle and their quality of life. More than lifestyle, really, I'd correct myself on that, to really elevate their quality of life in the type of building we do.
Right.
And I'm so grateful to my team as well and my partners that we've always been able to achieve that.
Right.
That we've always elevated people's quality of life.
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah. Can you give me an example? Like, what component would you add into a building or a house that you're building that significantly would improve somebody's quality of life? Is there one particular thing?
There are lots of things, but simple things like natural light, natural ventilation, inside outside spaces to be able to sit out, appreciate, yard spaces like high ceilings, good cross ventilation, and I said, like I said before, natural light, a good flow of space, creating spaces where the family can really merge well. It's not isolated. Spaces where different people enjoy what they have to do. Like could be the dad who actually enjoys sitting out on the veranda and reading his newspaper, to the mom who could be cooking in a beautifully laid out kitchen and then still interact with the kids, to having a really amazing living space that you could really entertain people beautifully. So I think that's how you elevate somebody's quality of life. And even things like their bedrooms, they're much more pleasant, soothing, comforting spaces.
Yeah. This sounds really intimate. Like, how well do you get to know like your client? It sounds like you get to know them really well.
Yeah, I think that's one thing about us being architects, is that we really get to know the inside outs of our clients really, really well. And also it comes to a place where they can't really hold themselves back. They need to bear at least most of it about themselves and their life and their interaction and their union and their marriages and their family and their relationship with their kids, all of that. And that's precious. That's precious in information. We value it that they trust us to share that with us. And we value that we can become an integral part of their family. And what's awesome for me, the greatest tribute or the greatest achievement or the greatest award actually really is not just going to some international architectural awards and winning an award, but really to be able to go back to their home, sit together with them, have a meal, have their accolades being poured out upon us, and to see how happy they are and become really good friends with them. And that's something we've achieved for the longest time ever with most of our clients.
That's really cool. Obviously, like since we're all based in Sri Lanka, I think it's a very important thing to talk about, is that during Sri Lanka's mindset is at a very interesting point right now, given that we just, we came from the Easter bombings to COVID to the economic crisis. There's one thing after the other in the recent past. You being a business person running your own practice, it didn't really slow down for you. I remember when we used to talk, like during like the points where everybody talks about things are about to get bad, you were actually doing the complete opposite.
Yeah, so I think there's two things to this. I mean, of course, you know me as a spiritual person, so there's that side. But I'm also a person who really believes about the aura or the attitude or the vibration or the atmosphere that you create. And you'll find, Jason, that people who are always sort of mongers of bad news and people who are always wanting to see the negative side of it, they're always complaining about the government, they're always complaining about somebody, and they're always prophets of doom and gloom. They're never happy with whoever who comes to power. They're never happy with whoever who's leading an industry. They're always sort of, pardon my language, but always bitching about somebody in some place of success, and they're always trying to bring down somebody's success. They're sort of attributing it to, oh, he's doing well, he's probably like into some kind of drug dealing or some kind of mafia, or you know how it goes. And you'll find that kind of person will fare terribly, not just during an economic crisis. They can't even, they're sometimes not even able to raise their heads in a time of prosperity. Right. Because they're constantly stuck in that place, and now they've sort of dug themselves too deep into the mud. That even if they want to think positively and see positively, they can't pull themselves out. Right? So that's one fundamental thing that I learned. I learned this from the time I was young, from the time of the war, because you didn't talk about the war.
That's right. Yeah, 30-year war.
Yeah, and I'm like, we are children of that war, right? And that was a time when you would know that the bombs going out everywhere, and like your projects can get stalled within 10 minutes. Like something blows up, your client can call you up and say the project's cancelled. That's all it takes, right? And that's a time when this is what the spiritual side kicks in, because actually, really, you can't separate spirituality and the sort of scientific dimension, right, about energy and the vibration and the positivity that you create. They're both intertwined, right? And so I would make it a point that even in this Colombo cocktail circuits, whenever somebody is being very negative or continuously complaining or whinging, I would quickly move away and join a different group of discussion. And I'll even change the topic. I wouldn't even in a word attribute or subscribe to it, even if it was right. And it's not sort of foolishly digging your head into the sand and saying, oh, everything is positive. But it's just understanding that it's important that you don't get sucked into this vortex of negativity. Right. So it's tricky. It's sometimes quite it's sort of nerve-wracking, because you have to constantly maintain that level of positivity. And of course, yes, my goodness, I have tremendous faith in a greater being. And that's huge. That's probably the biggest overriding covering factor. But I'm trying to be relatable to anybody.
Absolutely.
So, but of course, yes, I can't not finish this podcast without attributing my faith in something that is greater and divine that oversees this. So I think it's both of that. So I think that's what people need to learn, is that if you're constantly whinging about, and yes, there are lots of things to complain about in this country, and I do, sometimes I have, but even if I do complain, it's like, it's a positive sort of, okay, this is a problem that we need to address. How do we address them? How do we address people's lack of attention to detail or their pride in their work? These are actual problems that this country has. Right? But it doesn't mean that we are constantly whinging on that and then not hiring new staff, or we are constantly not wanting to elevate the quality of our staff. I'm constantly training my staff to higher levels. I'm constantly trying to train them. That's why, if I were to just finish off, when I correct them or reprimand them, I always tell them I'm not doing this because I'm trying to vent my anger. I'm just trying to elevate the standard of your work. Right? And I also tell them, it's not just because I'm selfishly trying to elevate the standard of your work to benefit my company. Tomorrow, if you were to go and start your own company, you need to have a certain quality of work.
Absolutely.
If you were to go tomorrow and join a different organization, you need to have a certain quality of work. Right?
And that you're literally shaping an industry when you do that as well. Creating standards.
Just a mindset. You're even whether it's the waiter who brings the food to your table. You can always, he can change. There are brilliant people who wait on me, who I've gone to restaurants. They're amazing. Like, they're world class. But then there are also sloppy, slovenly people who you can sometimes, maybe somebody's never told them about. Right?
Absolutely.
So maybe they don't know.
Right? Yeah, that's a very interesting story that I wanted to share with you. We were actually at a party celebration last week together, and there was this young guy at the who was serving the drinks at the bar, and there happened to be this international like bartender, flipping drinks, throwing straws, and it comes back and doing the fireworks and all that good stuff. And I saw this young guy, like he's just basically a server behind the bar, and I was like, all I told him was watch. Just that's all you got to do. You don't need to go to school. I mean, at some point you should when you get the opportunity, but all you need to do is just watch. Exactly. Just look, and then that opportunity for you will come. That's all you need to do. And that just reminded me of that in terms of like
absolutely
people that will stop themselves from moving forward in a certain thing, saying that they don't have that opportunity. Just have to just look like what you were doing.
Spot on. I mean, it's like in a sense, you shouldn't even have to say that to this guy. He should be able to look at it and say, hey, I need to now start watching. Because that's Jason, that's how we learn.
Yeah.
Trust me, when we were students, we didn't have access to internet, and stuff like that. We had books and we would experience actual buildings. We would walk through actual buildings.
Yeah.
So what we would do is just go and ring people's bells, house bells, and ask them to open up their houses and show it to us.
No way.
So we took that initiative to go and experience architecture and see good buildings.
Yeah, I love that. I love that like at that time it pushes you to take that initiative onto yourself and do it today instead of waiting. I also think that there is no right time to like, whether it's like some people, I think in today's context, they wait for the right logo, the right branding to start. And I think it's more just start and then kind of figure it out as you go at the same time. But we were talking about the landscape of Sri Lanka. Like, what is the current state of Sri Lanka given all of the stuff that had happened in the past? And now we're here in 2024. From your experience your expertise as an architect, what is Sri Lanka's landscape looking like in terms of like development?
So there's massive potential right now because Sri Lanka is viewed by many international investors as a country that's still growing and has tremendous potential for growth. But I think our people need to realize that. We can't sit back and wait for handouts. We can't feel entitled. I think that's a huge problem. The Sri Lankans feel entitled that, so-and-so should help us. They should do this or they have to do this.
Yeah.
And also we need to move past just living in our past glory. Oh, we did Sigiriya, we had Polonnaruwa, or we did this. I mean, that's all old hat.
Yeah.
And we need to evolve ourselves, Jason, to a place where every single person out on the street value political stability, right? They need to put the country above their needs. Or I need to go out on the road and protest or create a disturbance because my salary needs to be raised. Or I need to go out there and demand for free education, right? And then make the country's situation volatile, that no investor is now willing to come and invest.
Right.
So we need political stability. And we need a political system and a structure that has consistent policy. Today you have one policy where it says, foreigners can come in and invest like this. And then tomorrow somebody else comes in and says, no, that's all cancelled. And so every 5 years this keeps changing. And everybody is working to their whims and fancies. Right. And so what happens is the public is also behaving in the same way. That's why I said it's, people should start first evolving themselves and bring discipline amongst themselves before calling out politicians and saying they are not consistent. The public need to be, first of all, very clear about we are keen on development. We are focused on development. We want to put the country first.
Right.
Before our needs. And people might pout it and say it, and they can go out on the streets and demonstrate and hold placards. Most of those people are holding placards and demonstrating when they need their own benefits and they need those documents signed in the government department or something passed, or they need something to go through the customs or whatever it may be, they are willing to pull all the strings and do everything else. And then they are so focused on themselves. So really, I think those who are the supposed intellectuals of this country and those who are supposed to be the supposedly prosperous in this country need to come to a place where they say, yes, we are willing to put the country first and let's get the country on a stable footing.
Right.
We want demand from our politicians that there's political stability. We want to demand from politicians that there be a consistent policy in relation to everything in the country, that there is a 15, 20-year plan, right? And that's what's amazing about India, because India is now being steadily growing rapidly because they've been able to have very consistent policies and a stable government.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like people need to be more specific with what we want, what we're asking for.
Absolutely.
Because it's very easy to get warped into an agenda where you don't even know where it started from. But if we're specific, or specific at least to ourselves and our own businesses or within our own families, I feel like that would give a clear direction of where we're going.
And not get fooled by, sort of really shallow promises. Like, a country needs taxes.
Yeah.
I have to pay a lot of tax, right? But it's a reality that I need to accept.
Yep.
We have to be realistic about our energy bills.
Yes.
Right? People might turn around and say, oh, you're well off, so that's why. But, even before I was well off, I had to pay taxes, right?
Yeah.
And I have staff. I may be well off, but I have to pay taxes and then still look after my staff. I need to run a business, right? And my profits drop, right?
Yeah.
But that's the reality. If you have to really rebuild this country, we can't live in this fake utopia of, oh, we don't need taxes, or we can lower taxes, we can lower energy bills and subsidize this and subsidize that and subsidize everything.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line, we've got to bite that bitter or swallow the bitter pill.
Yeah.
Or bite the bullet, as they would say. Like we had to with the war. There was a point where we had to say, and we had a strong government, we had to say, yes, we'll have to go through a difficult period of 9 months or a year to really eradicate this menace. And when I say menace, I'm not talking about a certain ethnic minority.
Absolutely.
But I'm talking about a scourge of terrorism.
Yes.
Which is very different to the ethnic problem that we had, which really needs to be resolved. And we still have a problem.
Yeah.
We still have a problem where minorities are not treated equally,
Yeah.
That's a different problem. But the country, or at least the majority, resolves saying, okay, we are going to somehow get this problem out of the way.
Absolutely. You brought up an interesting point about your staff and the people that you work with. We're just diverting for a second here, because this is a very trending thing right now. OpenAI, the guys that did ChatGPT, they released this thing called Sora AI, which essentially now puts filmmakers and Hollywood itself on its knees at this point, because the AI that they dish out, like the video that it dishes out, you can't really tell if it's real, unreal, or if it's AI generated, or if it's not.
Right.
And so my question to you is, like, filmmakers are now facing this problem. It's not a scary problem. We actually do we integrate it into our workflow and our system. How has artificial intelligence with architecture, has it been a pro for you in your industry so far, or has it been like a little bit of a threat? Like, what are you seeing?
So far, it's been a pro, because I think there are limitations, right? In AI can still create things.
Yeah.
I think we as human beings now need to elevate our game to the next level. As AI comes up as a challenge, we need to be able to evolve. So you as a film producer, me as an architect, how do we start creating products that or make ourselves indispensable in a sense? And I really believe that we have a massive advantage of our human sensory nature of the touch, feel, our emotions. AI doesn't have emotion. Right? AI doesn't have sensory perceptions.
Right.
And these are things that in your field of creativity and in my field of creativity are huge. Everything is about the sensory stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just that we have really, and that's where I think we are probably coming back a full circle. Because AI came because of the rapid advancement of technology.
Yes.
And I was a great proponent always of just using pen, pencil, and paper, because there's an amazing, beautiful flow of creativity from one's brain down into your limbs, right? And I believe that we are now going to come back to a place where we will start proving ourselves that our faculties, in its rawest form, can create amazing, creative creative products that AI cannot.
Right.
And I think you start seeing, I mean, for somebody who's sensitive and sharp, even for you, you'll be able to see the difference, that those subtle nuances, that something that is produced by a human hand, a human director, right, as opposed to AI generated production. And it's the same way I can say, like, for instance, I mean, I do teach on and off, I'm called in, and there's a massive deficit that I see in the current architectural education system is that people are just working on keyboards and with a mouse and a keyboard. And you can't really design buildings just off a keyboard and a mouse. And I can immediately see the hardness, the lack of gentleness. It has no sensitivity, it has no emotion, it has no character. So students are churning out a lot of work that's so hard and emotionless.
Interesting. That's a good, interesting way of putting it. Because yes, it is our job, even as filmmakers, to evoke emotion. When you look at something, you make people feel something. Whether it's a brand film, whether it's a corporate video, whatever it is, whether it's action, whether it's like racing their heartbeat up, that is our job, to try to draw them in and immerse them into what they're watching. So I can see that. Going back to what we were talking about in Sri Lanka's landscape, where do you see Sri Lanka's potential skyline looking like with Port City coming up? I mean, there seems to be a lot of like investment still coming in some form. What do you see the future skyline looking like? And obviously you having a part to play in it. What do you expect to see in terms of like what you were talking about before about like drawing inspiration from colonialism to what Sri Lanka's identity is potentially growing into? What would you like to see as Sri Lanka's skyline? So
it's like this, Jason. We have a lot of things going against us. Like we are a small country, massive demand on land. We don't have an infrastructure that enables or facilitates an urban sprawl, a more sort of a linear sprawl, a more horizontal sprawl. So we are being pressurized daily to sort of go vertically. Because people can't afford those long distances of commute. Right, get into schools, to offices, etc. So we'll definitely be going vertically, and that's inevitable. We can't avoid that. The second thing is that there aren't any buildings in the world that one could say have evolved specific, sort of country specific or region specific in terms of high-rise design. There are a few things that are maybe a few nuances on the way an exterior is tackled, right? But really, there aren't any buildings that one could say have really evolved. So I can just see sort of an international style coming in. And that's what you have already if you look at some of the high-rise buildings we have. And we've also just completed a high-rise at like a 47-story apartment block. And, or 45, I've lost count of the floors now. But again, sort of, that's the international style. And I don't want something to be very cliched, or there's a word we use called pastiche, which is sort of you sort of paste on things to make it look Sri Lankan. It's like, people sometimes go and plonk a sort of a two-pitch roof and think that it's candy, it's Sri Lankan. Or it's like, you think that, okay, you wear some kind of national dress and then you suddenly become Sri Lankan. It's not that. It's something about something that's more deep, and that's what people like Jeffrey Bawa did. Some of his later works were very international. He didn't have any semblance of Sri Lanka in terms of carvings or motifs or painting, but they were very international buildings, but the essence of the space was Sri Lankan. And it'd be really interesting for someone to really be able to evolve or come up with a sort of a high-rise design or a patent that has a sort of some sort of inspiration from this region. But all of this sort of takes time, cost, energy, willing clients who are maybe willing to spend that much more. So it'll be interesting. But I think for the short term, you're going to just see a lot of international looking buildings. And I think every city is now ending up looking like the other. Bangkok looks like Hong Kong. Hong Kong looks like Singapore. Singapore looks like Hong Kong. Looks like Kuala Lumpur. Mumbai looks like Hong Kong. So I think every city is just sort of having that sort of very generic form of look and feel.
That's interesting. So obviously, thank you. I just have to thank you for taking the time to just share your thoughts on how you see Sri Lanka, because you have invested a majority of your time in Sri Lanka, even though you're working on projects internationally. you're always focused on bringing the work here and growing your team at the same time. And I just had to appreciate that. I had to appreciate it because that's something that I aim to do, bringing film to Sri Lanka, bringing it back, to be honest. Like after the 1980s, everything just kind of been like flat. And now it's starting to pick up slowly of Sri Lanka being an actual film destination in the future. Because we do have all of these beautiful natural components around our country, but I think it's more like the infrastructure of the industry that's important. And I see what you're doing with the architectural industry as well. And so I'm trying to mimic that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can tell you, Jason, we have phenomenally talented people in this country.
Yeah,
like absolutely. My staff, my team leaders, and my senior partners, they're phenomenal. I mean, like we've done work with celebrity superstar architects from all over the world. Yeah. And those guys are amazed at the quality of work that we've produced to support them and supplement them.
Nice.
So that's just shown them that we are world class. They just need the right environment, the right atmosphere, the right encouragement. And I think our people can really excel. And it's, I think, time we started giving value to ourselves without underselling ourselves.
Yes.
And really like in our industry, like the foreign company that comes in from Singapore, Hong Kong can get paid so much, but the Sri Lankan company only gets paid half that, half the amount of fees.
Yeah,
we need to change that thinking, and for that, the Sri Lankan, the business community, the people who are commissioning these projects also need to change their mindset.
Yeah, agreed, 100% agreed. I can't agree more. Do you all agree? Yes. I love when they get exposed to people like you and Johan and all of the interesting folk that have been in here is because it just shifts their mindset to thinking differently from what the mainstream thought is.
Absolutely.
And so again, Philip, thank you so much for giving us your time and just being here. This is great. We should do this again.
Yeah, great fun.
Yeah. The next time with probably coffee, because I think you just sipped on water the whole time.
Yeah, I've had 3 coffees. That's why.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching episode 5 of I'm No Expert. We'll catch you on the next one. And please do leave a comment in the comment section below on who you would like to see next. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.